Hi there, welcome back to Rovey Gardens. Now I'm stood in front of a shrub which I think is unfairly vilified, so I just want to champion it, and that's Mahonia. Now Mahonia is a fairly common shrub. There's a lot of varieties that you'll find in your garden centres, but I've got a specimen here. This is a cultivar called Winter Sun, and it's such a great example of what these plants become. I just wanted to show it to you. Now Mahonias are evergreen shrubs, so you can see the foliage here. They're really quite striking. They're really spiky, so they're quite useful as a boundary plant or to add security to your garden. And in the summer, that foliage in itself is quite architectural. They go really well with other evergreens like bamboo, fatsias. They're almost quite prehistoric looking, so they're quite Jurassic. So they're a really interesting texture to add to your garden. But it's the winter time where these plants really come into their own. Now, these are mainly woodland plants, so they thrive in shadier conditions. They like to have their roots in moist soil, not waterlogged, but access to lots of moisture. And in the winter time, you can just begin to see these yellow flowers emerging from the plant. Now we're in mid to late autumn, so these flowers are at the very early stage of their development, and you can see them smothered along the shrub. But come December, these long sort of ribbons of flower will be fully out, and they're just amazing. They have this really puncturing sulphur yellow colour, which really is striking in the winter garden. And not only do they look nice, but they obviously provide food and nectar to insects on the wing in the winter, so they have a wildlife benefit, and they also smell amazing. They have a really sweet perfume. So if you catch it on a cold winter's day, not only do they draw your eye, but they also draw your sense of smell. So a really versatile and interesting plant in that regard. Now, as I said, they are quite large shrubs, and they can get quite bare and quite woody. So you can see here, these really quite gnarled woody stems can emerge. Now this is a really good example of a consistently grown shrub. It has really good consistency throughout. It's not top heavy, which they can get. If yours does get top heavy, when it finishes flowering, you can just cut it back as hard as you want, and they're really responsive to that. So they will rejuvenate quite easily. So they're very versatile. So don't worry about them getting too big. And if you don't prune them and you leave the flowers, what you'll find is those flowers will go from that lovely yellow to a lovely purple berry. So the contrast in colours and interest is just amazing. And those berries are great food for birds in the summer, and they make the plant look nice as well. And they are edible to humans, although I wouldn't recommend to eat them because they're not the most palatable, but you know, you can if you want. So just everything that this shrub has got is just, in my opinion, brilliant for the garden. Now, these spikier varieties are, as I said, flowering in winter and the spring, but there are other cultivars which are beginning to come into garden centres, which are more adaptive to modern gardens. So there's a lovely autumn flowering Mahonia called Mahonia Soft Caress. Now the name gives it away. It has, rather than prickly foliage, spiky foliage, it has lovely soft foliage. Almost resembles a fern. It's quite a ferny type foliage, and it's soft. So, you know, if you're not looking for a spiky Mahonia, that one is a great substitute, and it only grows to about 5 foot, 1.5 meters. So ideal for a small garden. And that, as I said, flowers in the autumn. Not as floriferous, and the berries aren't as striking, but these ones, as I say, can get quite big. So if you're looking for a slightly different type of Mahonia, there's probably a Mahonia that suits your needs. So as I said, I just want to champion it because it's such a great plant, and this one looks so nice. And in my opinion, if you're looking for something that is striking, dramatic, versatile, has varying degrees of interest, a Mahonia is for you.